everyone loves new pattern day, and today we got a new one, but it's kind of an old one too. So this is the Julie, and you may recognize it as the DB Pocket Tote because it is. However, we made some improvements. So we're going to be doing this one today in the video. This is made with leather. So this is some of the Italian leather that I got. Amazing to work with, no skiving needed. You'll see me go through every step. Beautiful, easy to work with. The kits are available online on my website. Here's a faux leather in the gray blue ostrich. And let's go over some of the features of the bag. So we changed up a couple of things to improve it. We put some additional stabilizer in the middle section here as needed. We also added a zipper placket at the top. The original free pattern had just a snap closure, and the zipper placket actually helps it keeps its shape a little bit better. So those two things are an added bonus. We have two pockets. We have one in the front and we have one in the back. And then we have inside, on one side we have a zipper pocket and a small slip pocket. And then on this side we have a slip pocket, and I put a little pen pocket in there. So it's a great sized tote, kind of a medium sized satchel. Sits just under your arm. And of course, if you ever want to make the straps longer, you certainly can. If you want to make them shorter and just make it a carry bag, you can certainly do that as well. So I hope you enjoy this tutorial. We're going to take you through every step. The Julie. We're going to start by going over pattern pieces, and we're going to do it in the steps that are in the pattern. So step one is handles and handle connectors. And so we have two handles. I have one that is prepared. We're going to sew it here on camera, but I went ahead and got it ready. And the other one I actually have not done anything to. And the reason why is because this is real leather from Italy, and I want to show you how easy this is to turn and stitch just like normal. The other thing we have is strap connectors. Now in the pattern, I give you the measurements for those. You can either cut them individually or cut one long strip like this and then stitch and then cut them up, which is what we're going to do today. I drew a line down the center of this and just put a row here of 1/2 inch double-sided tape on top of that line. So our pieces for step two, which is the exterior, we have our two side pieces. And the side pieces are actually the biggest pieces in this pattern. So don't confuse these with the front, because the front and back have pockets. So what you want to do on these side pieces is to go ahead and mark. I actually drew a line 1/2 inch all the way around. And then I cut my deck of the light and I fused it right in the middle. Along one of the 12-inch, this is almost a square, so along one of the 12-inch edges, you want to write the word top on it, because since it's so close to being a square, you don't want to accidentally put it this way when we're cutting in our hidden connectors. So you want to make sure that you just write the word top on there, on both pieces, and those are our sides. We have our pocket pieces. We have two of these, and on the pocket pieces you're going to draw a 1/2 inch line from one short edge, and then you're going to place your deck of the light right above that 1/2 inch line. Okay, so you'll see you have a wider space here at the top than you do at the bottom, and that's okay. That's what we want. So we have two of these pocket pieces. We have two middle base pieces. And on the middle base pieces, what we're going to do is draw a line a 1/2 inch from the top, and we're going to put the little piece of deck of the light right against that line. So we're going to do that on both pieces, and this is your middle base piece. And then of course we have our bottom. The next step is the zipper placket, and for the zipper placket we have two main pieces and we have two lining pieces. Now the main pieces have no interfacing or anything on the back, no stabilizer, nothing. The lining pieces have a woven interfacing, and I'm using Woven Fuse 2, but you can use SF101 or whatever you might have. And then of course we need our zipper. So step 4 is the lining. And for the lining, we need our main lining pieces. And now if you cut them out with a pattern piece, then you're already gonna have your squares cut out at the bottom of these pieces. You're gonna have a square in each corner. I cut mine out for measurements. So I'm gonna go over with you how to cut those squares out. We also have our upper lining pieces. And the upper lining piece, I have 2 of those. I did the same thing where from the very top, I drew a line a 1/2 inch away, and then I put my Decaville light right up against it. So we have 2 upper linings. We have our zipper overlay. We have our slip pocket accent pieces. There's a smaller slip pocket and a larger slip pocket, so I have 2 of those. Of course, I have my key fob piece. I have my zipper for my interior zipper pocket. And then I have 2 zipper pocket pieces. Of course, 2 pieces to a zipper pocket. All of my lining has some kind of woven interfacing on the back. Again, I use Woven Fuse 2. You can use SF101 or whatever you might have. We have a small slip pocket and we have a large slip pocket. And then we have our exterior pocket lining pieces, 2 of those. And then in the last step, step 5, we put all of it together. So let's get sewing. The first thing that we want to do is work on step 1, which is our handle and our handle connectors. So I've mentioned before, I have one handle prepped and ready to sew, and I just want to show you how I prepared that. So I have my handle here, and I drew a line down the center. I'm going to put some 1/4 inch double-sided tape on each side of that line. You do it on both sides and not quite to the end, and I'll show you why in just a minute. So I'm going to take this to my punch, and I'm going to actually punch that edge in. And to do that, I want to make sure that everything stays flat when I do it. I don't have any weird bubbles or it not actually all sticking together. So I'm going to put 1 extra piece of double-sided tape going vertically down the side of this on both sides. And that's just going to help those ends hold together. I'll do it on both sides. So now I'm going to peel the backing off of this tape, and we're going to treat this just as if it was faux leather. We're going to fold it to the center, and then we're going to fold it again. So this particular leather is 0.8 millimeters thick. It is a very soft temper, and it is amazing to work with. You don't have to skive it or do anything special with it. So I'm just going to make sure my ends are lined up. Just kind of pat this in place, and I'm putting this just underneath the line. So I don't want to put the edge all the way to the line. I'm just putting it shy of the line, because when we actually fold this in half, we want to give it space to fold. And if we don't do that, then it has a higher probability of twisting. You certainly don't want that to happen. Another thing too is, as you're doing this, make sure it's laying flat. A lot of times twisting starts at the table, And so if you're twisted before you even get to the sewing part, then it's going to be tough to get that corrected. Okay, so you can see here that there is a space between those two, just a little bit. It's not even 1/4 of an inch. And then I'm just going to fold this together again. And by having that space in there, it gives this room to fold without bunching up. And we're going to put some clips. Now, because I want to sew around my curved edge, I'm going to punch the edge before I sew. So to make sure this lays flat, again, I'm going to put just a little bit more double-sided tape. Right here on the edge and on both sides. I'm going to peel the backing off of that and make sure those edges are nice and even. Even though we're punching them, we still want to make sure that everything's lined up. Put this other piece over here on this side. So from here, I would go ahead and punch my edges, which I'll do in just a minute. This handle, the edges are already punched, as I mentioned. So we are going to sew this handle. But before I get started, I'm also going to go ahead and take the backing off the tape on the handle connectors and fold these into the middle. Now we're only folding these one time, so you do want these long edges to meet when you fold them in. So making sure it meets exactly right there in the middle. And then once we sew these down both sides, then we'll cut them and we'll have our strap connectors. So I always like to use my edge guide whenever I do straps. I can sew straight line on most days, but sometimes things happen, and it also makes sure that you get it the same distance on both sides. So I'm always going to stick that on there. And I'm going to sew about 1/8 of an inch. So let's sew these strap connectors first. Move my edge foot over just a little bit. Or not my edge foot, but my edge guide. Okay, let's get going. Do the other side. And then all I'm going to do is cut these to the measurement that I give you in the pattern. We need 4 of them. Okay. So our strap connectors or our handle connectors are done. Set those aside and let's sew our handle. Now whenever I sew a handle like this, I always start right here at the bottom of the folded side. I'm not going to backstitch, I'm going to pull my threads through, and then where that knot is going to be hidden, because when I fold this over and rivet it on to the bag, it's going to be in the middle. So I'm going to start here. I want to catch this curve as one of the first things I sew, because I want it shifting. We're going to sew down the long open edge, and then we're going to turn around and come back. Another thing I like to do is to just do a couple of cranks here with my wheel as I go around these sharp curves. little one. And then we're going to sew up the open side. And I'm just going to make sure that the two edges are even as I sew. So I'm going to hand crank around this edge here. Get a little bit closer. Okay, we're going to sew up the other edge. So I'm going to make sure I pull my thread through to the back. I'm also going to make sure that I start and stop in the same hole. We're going to pull this thread through to the back. We'll tie this off, and then we're going to just singe the thread to make sure it doesn't come apart. So I'm just going to snip that off. And then our handle is good to go. Now, this leather is really beautiful, and the color goes all the way through, and you really almost don't even need to edge coat that, which is amazing to me. So I might put a little bit, I might just put one, a little bit just to kind of make sure it looks good. I mean, this is an Italian leather bag, right? So we want it to look perfect. So I'm going to do exactly the same thing with the other handle, and then we'll move on. Moving on to step 2, which is the exterior. You're going to take your side pieces and make sure you have the word top up here at the top as we make these lines. We're going to draw some lines. So I give you some measurements in the pattern. You're going to go ahead and from the top, you're going to draw a line all the way across. And then from the side, each side, you're going to draw lines down. So what we're doing here is we're coming up with the exact spot that we need to put our hidden strap connector. Making sure we've got it all lined up. And I'm doing this in ballpoint pen on my Decaville. That way I can see it. I'm not worried about anything coming through to the front. And this is what I have. So what we're going to do is right here on this line, we are going to cut in the bag. Now, make sure your top is at the top before you cut, number 1. If for some reason you mess up and it goes this way, all is not lost. Your bag will just be a little shorter. And you'll just, when you get to your pocket sections, and you'll see what I mean in a minute, you'll just trim the bottom off to match this section and just keep going, okay? Don't worry if that happens. Just hopefully if you do it wrong on one piece, you do it wrong on both pieces. But our word top is at the top. I'm going to use my ruler and my craft knife, and I'm just going to cut a slit. Now, You'd rather undercut here than overcut. So I'm going to put my point in right at the edge, cut straight across, and try not to go too far, because I can always cut it a little bit bigger. There's one side, and let's do the other side. Okay, so now we have these two little holes here. See, there's one there, and one right here. Okay, so we have our strap connectors, we have our D-rings. First thing you want to do, and actually I'm going to set two of these aside because we only need two per side, is I'm going to take my strap connectors, and this is the top of the bag, this is the bottom. I'm going to place these in the slits, and I'm going to make sure that I see the wrong side of the connector here. So essentially we're putting the right side of the connector against the right side of the bag. Okay, I'm going to do that on both. And if your slit wasn't quite big enough, go ahead and just snip it a little bit more. Now, from here, what you want to be seeing or looking at here is about 2 inches on the right side. So I'm just going to make sure that it's sticking out right at 2 inches. Okay. And then on the wrong side, you should see about 1 inch. And it looks good. So what we're going to do from here is we are going to stitch on the strap connector itself just below this slit. And we don't want to overstitch. We're just going to stitch between this top stitch line and this top stitch line. So let me mark it with a silver marking pen so you can see where I'm talking about. So we're going to do it just like that. See that silver line? So by stitching there, we're obviously stitching the strap connector, but we're also going to be catching the back of this bag, and that's going to help this strap connector stay connected. Okay, so I'm going to start here and just go straight across. Now you don't want to put too many holes in your leather. You don't want to go back and forth a bunch of times. You just want to go forward once, back once, and that will be enough to hold it in place. And this is what we have so far. So now take your rectangle ring, put it on the connector, and you're going to stick the other end of the connector up through this slit and pull it through to the back. Okay, and you want to pull it so it's tight. And then that way you're just going to see a little bit of your strap connector here on the front. And it just gives it a nice little accent, a little pop of color. Now you don't want to pull it so tight that it buckles. But you want to pull it tight enough that you don't have any give in it, okay? So from here, I'm just going to pull the back away and we're going to stitch right on these strap connectors. We're going to stitch them together. So now, to even further hold those straps in place, those connectors, and make sure we don't have any problems, I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to measure a 1/2 inch down from the seam. Not the top of the connector, but the actual seam. You're going to go a 1/2 inch down and you're going to put a dot right in the center, and we're going to put a rivet through there and capture our strap connector in the back. So right where those dots are, not sure if you can see them there, I'm going to punch a hole and then I'm going to put a rivet and set the rivet. I'm going to do exactly the same thing with the other side. We have our side pieces done, rivets in, everything's looking good. So we're going to set these aside and we're going to move on to our pocket, front and back pocket pieces. So you're going to need your pocket pieces and your pocket lining. Match up right sides together, your pocket lining with your pocket piece, and you want to make sure that you're going to sew on the side where the decaville is furthest from the top. I'm going to put a few clips. And clip the other side as well. And then we're going to stitch this down. So take your piece, you're going to make sure your seam allowance is going towards the lining. You're going to flip it up and you're going to stitch top stitch on the lining itself, capturing that seam allowance underneath. From here, match the bottom of the pocket with the bottom of the pocket lining. Put a couple clips. And then you want to push the line or push the main fabric down. Now what's going to happen is you're going to see some of the main part of the bag on the back. And we want that because we don't want this lining peeking up through the back of the pocket. And this fold should be right at the top of your decaville, right at the very top of your stabilizer. So we're just going to go ahead and top stitch. On your base piece, you want to make sure the decaville is at the top, okay? So it's here at the top. And we're going to put the pocket piece at the bottom, and we're going to match up the bottoms. So I'm just going to put a few clips on here. And then clip the sides, and we're going to baste this in place. Now before you baste, make sure if you flip this, you can see that stabilizer. then we have a pocket piece done. Now, if you have a bag tag, a really good spot to put it is right here. So I'm going to put that on this piece before I baste it on my main. Another thing I want to tell you about is that if you are using a leather like this, 0.8mm leather, and you're sewing this on your domestic machine, one change you might want to make is instead of using a full base piece, you may want to cut the base piece and add a piece of lining here at the bottom. Because when we go to sew these seams and then try to get the bottoms on, you know, it can get a little bit thick. And just know your machine. Once you get the leather, you can kind of feel it and see if you think your machine can handle it. Maybe do a test of folding a little piece over a few times. But that's the one place where you might have a little bit of issue, is somewhere along this edge or this edge if you're sewing with a domestic machine. But if your domestic machine can typically handle a 0.8mm faux or a 1mm faux, you should be fine. So I'm going to put my tag on, baste this piece, and then we'll move on. We have our pocket pieces completed, and so now we're going to move on to putting this bag together. So take one of your side pieces, and you want to line up the pocket so that it's facing upwards. You're going to line up these sides here. I'm going to put some clips. And then we're going to do the same thing on this other side, clip it to the side. And now we're going to stitch, and you want to make sure you don't stitch on your decoville. So what I recommend is you stitch from this side so that you can see exactly where it is. I know you have some decoville over here, but it's just a short area, and we want to make sure we don't get any on any of the decoville on this side. So I'm going to stitch from the top to the bottom here, from the bottom to the top here, just so I can see exactly where all that is. From here, we're going to flip these open, and your seam allowance is going to want to go towards the side, and that's okay. So we want to flip it so that seam allowance goes underneath. And you're just going to kind of press this with your fingers, press it open. And now we're going to top stitch, and we're going to top stitch on the side piece. Okay, so we're just going to start here. We're going to go all the way down. Now, before I do that, I almost forgot, I want to clip away some of the bulk from these seam allowances. I'm not going to clip the whole seam, but right here at the top, I'm just going to clip a triangle. And do the same thing at the bottom. And then on the side. Okay, so now we're going to open these up and top stitch. We're going to do the same thing on this side. so from here, we're going to take our other side piece, make sure our handles connectors are at the top, and we're going to clip it to one of these sides. And we're going to stitch. Now, one thing I want to tell you, a little hint, is that if for some reason when you cut your pieces out, you have one of your either side or pocket pieces that might be a little bit longer than the other when you go to clip it on, match the top, because that is the spot that we want a nice even edge all the way around the bag when we're done. At the bottom, if we're off a little bit, we can just trim it before we put our bottom on. I'm going to trim the seam allowance. This one down here. And then we're going to top stitch this. Your seam allowance again is going to go towards the side of the bag. So keep the seam allowance over here on this side, and I'm just going to fold this over. So now we're going to connect these edges. Now comes the fun part. We need to stitch or top stitch in the tunnel. So what that means is we obviously have a great big tunnel here, and we need to top stitch this seam that we just sewed. So we want to, of course, lay our bag flat and run our hand up and down that seam to get it nice and flat. Whenever you stitch in the tunnel, or whenever I stitch in the tunnel, I like to start by making sure my needle is at the highest position, because I don't want to scratch my project with my needle. And I'm going to slide it in from the back. So just take and let this kind of bunch up. And get it all the way to the back. And it's a little tricky, but you can do this. There's plenty of room. Okay, once you get it there, make sure that seam is laying nice and flat. And then we're going to put our needle in and we're going to start stitching down. And just take it slow. And then as you stitch, it's going to get easier and easier because the pressure of the bag is going to get a little less. The pressure of this bag being all bunched up here. And we just top stitched in the tunnel. So from here, go ahead and match up your seams because we want to find the center of these sides. You can mark it with a notch or a fabric pen. And I'm going to find both the top and the bottom. Then you want to go ahead and combine your notches and match and mark the front and the back. So now that we have all of the notches made and all of our centers found, we're going to work on our bottom. Now, if you want purse feet, which I do, this is a really nice bag, and I want to make sure that I put every detail possible in it. I'm going to go ahead and make markings for the feet. So just like I did when I marked where to put the strap connectors, I'm going to not be shy about just marking this in a ballpoint pen. And I give you all of these measurements in the pattern. And what we're going to do is right where these lines connect is where we're going to put our feet. Now there's all different kind of purse feet. There's rivet feet, there's screw-in feet, there's the prong foot, which is what I actually like. And so that's how I'm going to install these feet. Now this bag actually would be a great bag to put a 5th foot if you want, because there's no seam here and there's nothing that hinders putting that foot in. So I'm going to find the center of this because I'm going to need to find it anyway. And I'm going to put one in the middle on this bag. Okay, I'm also going to mark the center of these short sides. And then here in this center, I'm going to draw a line. And then right in the middle, I'm going to put a line. So now I have all of my points marked. These two, and then I am going to put one in the middle. So I'm going to go ahead and install my feet. I use the prong feet, but again, whatever kind of feet you use is what you'll do. And then I'm going to show you something that I tried in a bag and I really liked. It's a trick. It's not in the pattern, but it's a nice addition to this bottom. I have the bottom done, and I have my feet in. These, like I said, are the prong feet. So I'm going to put some double-sided tape on here. This is the 1-inch double-sided tape from Waywak. And usually, or in the past, I have just stopped with this. But when I have my stuff down at the bottom of my bag and I reach down there, I can still kind of feel these prongs. I can still feel the bottom of the feet. And I don't really like that. So I want to give this bag a higher end feel. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm now going to pull off the back of this double-sided tape. And then I cut a piece of foam the exact same size as my stabilizer, in this case my Decaville. And I'm going to lay it right on top. And it should fit perfectly right on top of the stabilizer. And that double-sided tape is holding it in place. And kind of smush it to make sure. Now, from the right side, I am going to stitch this on. And you can feel, you can feel with the edges and where that is. You can kind of see how this bends like that, and you know where to kind of start and stop. And I'm just going to stitch all the way around, and it's going to give it a nice decorative stitch at the bottom, as well as giving it a nice foam feel at the bottom of the bag when the bag's completed. I'm going to pull my threads through to the back, and I'll tie those off. Okay, I'm going to pull these through. And then I'm going to stop in the same hole I started. Pull this through and tie it off. And then if you have like a little extra, you see here, sorry about that. You see here, you know, I've got, and it lined up with my Decoville, but I still have a little extra there. I'm just going to take my scissors and just trim that off. This is just a nice little added detail that I think will give the bags a little higher end feel. I don't know if the designers do it, but I like it. I think it feels good in the bag. Sometimes it's not just about the look, it's about the feel too. So from the back, that's what we have. You can't see feet, you got a little bit of cushioning, and then from the front, you've got a nice top stitch there that when you actually put your bag on, it's just going to be on the very edge, because that's my seam allowance right there where I'm bending it. Pretty cool. So let's go ahead and put this bottom on. So first of all, make sure you don't put it on the side that says top. Turn it around. And the second thing is you're going to want to put the long side of this bottom on the long side here, but remember the long side is the side, not the front and back. So you have to turn it so you see your pocket on the front. And then we're going to go ahead and just clip this in place. And we're going to worry about our long sides first and get those on. When you stitch this, let me get this so you can see it. You are going to start right here at the corner of your Decoville. Don't start at the edge of the piece, okay? We're going to start at the edge of the Decoville. We're going to sew all the way down, and we're going to stop over here at the edge of the Decoville. And we're going to do the same thing when we sew the other side on and the sides as well. So use your Decoville as a guide as to where to sew, and we're just basically sewing the Decoville square. And again, don't sew on top of your stabilizer, you always want to sew next to it. We're going to attach the other long side by matching up the centers and clipping it in place. All right, we're going to repeat. So from here we need to clip corners. So if you look at, not from the bottom, but look at it from the main part of your bag, where you're going to clip is right up to where your stitches stopped. So we're going to clip the actual bag, and we're just going to clip straight up. Just move your bottom out of the way when you do it. Okay, so I'm just going to go like this, clip right up to the stitches. And so now you see here what I have. The bag's clipped, the bottom's still there, and I just clipped right to my stitches. And what that's going to do is allow this piece here to turn and form the side of our bag. If we didn't clip that, we're asking the material to do something it doesn't want to do, which is bend in the wrong direction. So, or in a direction it doesn't want to bend. So by doing that, it allows this side piece here to actually fold like it needs to. So we're going to do that with all 4 sides. Okay, and then we're just going to match our centers on the side. And you will see how opening that up, let's see if I can show that to you. You see how you have that little square right there? It just opened that up and it fit perfectly on both sides. So we're going to do the same thing over here. We're going to clip, wonder clip that is. A lot of clips and snips. And then that side should sit beautifully. So now, whenever I sew this seam, I sew it from this side. You know, when I sewed these seams, I sewed them from the bottom. I was looking at my bottom when I sewed it. This time, I'm going to actually stand the bag up, and I'm going to start right in the same stitch that I stopped at when I did my side seam. And we're going to stitch all the way across to this side. Now, if it looks like, oops, I should have taken one more stitch over here on these sides, you can certainly do that. We just are trying to get this side piece to fit exactly right. So I'm just going to lay my bag down. So when you do this, just take your bag and you can just push it down like this and then go ahead and stitch. And then you see how that is. I started and stopped in the same spot here, and then just stitched right across to the other side. So we're going to do the same thing to the other side. And sometimes, just to kind of make sure my corners are nice, I will actually put my needle down here and stop and turn my bag and take a stitch in the other direction. You know, if I feel like it might be off just a tad, and that's just going to make that corner nice. Okay, so the last thing we have to do is to cut back these seam allowances. So I'm going to make sure my corners are rounded here. And we have a lot of bulk here because we have our pocket, and this is the spot in here where you might have a little bit of a hard time with a domestic with this bag. If you're sewing with a thick faux or a leather. But if you replace from here down on the back side with lining, like I mentioned earlier, that will cut out some of this bulk. So I just like to just kind of round these corners a little bit. Okay. Stitch down here, just cut that off. And I do like to make sure that usually everything looks okay on the inside before I do that. All right, one last side here. All right, everything looks good, so we can go ahead and turn the bag. So one great thing about leather is that you can kind of form it and it stays. So I'm just going to kind of squeeze these seams and help train the leather to do what I want it to do. Okay, and that's what we have. You can actually even try to like start forming these side seams. Now, of course, faux leather won't do that. Faux leather's not going to hold its shape, but leather will. So now let's move on to step 3, which is the zipper placket. For the zipper placket, you're going to need your 2 main zipper placket pieces, your 2 lining zipper placket pieces, and of course your zipper. So the first one that we want to do is form a right angle with our zipper teeth. You can actually draw a line here to make sure that you're pinching in the same spot because you want these teeth to be exactly lined up. So I'm just going to take a little silver marking pen here, and you can either use a ruler or you can eyeball it. I'm going to use the side of a ruler, and I'm just going to make a couple of marks on this zipper. Okay, there's just a few marks on there. So we're now going to take and pinch on the mark so that the zipper is folded back on itself, and then we're going to take that pinch and fold it up to the zipper teeth and put a pin. So it looks like that. So we're going to repeat for the other side. Pinch right on that line, fold it up to the teeth, and put a pin. So you just want to make sure that your teeth are about even. And if they're off one tooth, when you go to put your zipper pull on, you can certainly cheat that a little bit. It'll be all right. So from here, we're going to just tack this in place. You always want to usually have the zipper behind your machine. And we're just going to do a little back and forth tack here. So now we have our zipper tape tacked. So take all of your pieces and flip them over, all your placket pieces here, and we're going to put some double-sided tape on these. I like to use 1/2 inch because we're going to fold these over 1/2 inch, and that just helps me know where to fold. If you prefer, you can actually mark 1 inch down on each of these short sides and then fold your short edge to the 1 inch line. It's whatever is easiest for you. I'm just going to cut these apart. And then we're going to take one main piece and one lining piece, just set it aside. On your main piece, go ahead and peel the backing off the tape and fold both short ends over a 1/2 inch. On the lining, peel the backing off one side and fold it over a 1/2 inch. Leave the other side unfolded at the moment. Using your 1/8 of an inch double-sided tape, we're going to put it along the long edge, one long edge of the main piece and one long edge of the lining piece. But on the side of the lining that I don't have folded back yet, I'm just going to cut it a little bit short, because I know I'm going to fold that edge back. So peel the backing off the tape. On the main piece, we're going to start with that one. And then you want to put the edge of your zipper right along that long edge. Now you want your teeth to be fairly close to the edge, but not right on the edge. You want to give yourself a little room there. And don't pull your zipper. You're just going to very gently lay it down. So we don't want any wavy zippers. Okay, peel the backing off the tape from the lining piece and match the short edge of the lining piece up with the short edge of the main piece. And then I'm just placing this double-sided tape right along that side of that zipper, lining up all these edges here. And then when I get to the other edge where my lining is not folded yet, I'm going to peel the backing off, and then I will fold this side to match the already folded main side there. So now those are even. And it may be that you have to fold it more than a 1/2 inch or less than a 1/2 inch. Doesn't matter. You just want to make sure that they're even. So from here, you're going to stitch 1/4 of an inch along this long edge. Now you want to make sure this is nice and straight, and you want to make sure that you use the same 1/4 inch on this side as you do on the other side. This is going to be the top of your bag, and you want those stitches to be really nice, and you want the main fabric to be the same distance from the zipper on this side as it's going to be on the other side. So if you want to use your edge guide to do this, feel free to do that. A lot of times I do. I don't want to overstitch onto the zipper, so I'm just going to take a couple stitches, and then I'm going to put my edge guide here just to help me keep this straight. Now when you get to where your zipper is, you're going to have to kind of pull this up or move your edge guide. Make sure everything looks nice and straight. And it looks to me like maybe right here I'm a little closer than I am down here. So instead of taking that apart, I'm just going to restitch it. I'm just going to stitch it a little closer. So I'm going to pick up right where it looks like I went awry. So from here, well actually first let's clip off this little piece of zipper that's sticking out. Burn the edge of that. And we're going to fold this back so that the wrong sides are together. And we're going to clip it. Do the same thing on this side. And then in the middle here, I'm just going to fold this over, clip these edges. And I'm just clipping the long raw edges. And then I'm going to just kind of run my finger down and finger press this, because of course we cannot iron it. So from here, take your other pieces. You're going to remove the backing off one side of your main piece. Fold that over. One side of the back of the tape on the lining, and fold that over. We're going to put some 1/8 of an inch double-sided tape along one long edge. And we're going to start out by lining up the main piece. So we're going to put it against the zipper teeth, or excuse me, the zipper edge, and we want to line up these short edges. And it doesn't really matter what side you start on. And then we're going to line all this up. Again, don't pull your zipper, just lay it down. Then on this side, we're going to peel the backing off the tape, and we're going to match up those tops. Now, if you are folding it at your zipper teeth, you also want to make sure that it's about the same distance from your zipper teeth as the other one. Okay, then we're going to do the same thing with the lining. I'm going to take the edge that's folded first and line it up. Make sure that you're using the side with the tape. I don't know why I do that every time. Okay, line it up. And lay it on top. And then when we get to the end, we're going to peel the backing off the tape and just fold that over. Make sure it all matches up. So I'm going to start up here, and we're going to stitch it. So let's clip this off, these teeth off, burn this edge. And then I want to make sure that this looks like it's about the same distance away from the zipper as the other side. And it looks really good. So I'm going to put these wrong sides together. Now, a little tip when working with leather is you can really reduce your seam allowances if you hammer the leather. I know that sounds strange, but leather's fairly dense, so when you hammer it, somehow it disperses or something. I'm not really sure what happens, but all I know is it makes it better. So, and a lot of times you see leather artists hammering their leather. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to just take this over to my punching station. I'm going to take my mallet and I'm just going to hammer the bulk right in here, right where it's super bulky, and get these seam allowances as flat as possible, or these seams as flat as possible. And then once I do that, we're going to top stitch. I hammered these down and it really took a lot of the bulk out. I can feel that they're thinner. Now in bulky areas, a lot of times you need to take it just a little bit slower when you stitch. So you're going to see me do some hand cranks as we go through and stitch this on. Also, my zipper started coming apart, so I went ahead and put a zipper on here. I'm going to take this off in just a minute. I just wanted to make sure that my zipper was together so that I could actually kind of pull this as I'm stitching it to make sure it all lays flat. So right here where there's some bulk, I'm actually going to form a little hump jumper with my leather, my spare piece of leather, and I'm going to take a couple of hand stitches to get past this bulk. And then once I'm past it, I still have the back of my foot on the leather. You can see it right here. I'm just going to put this leather in here to make sure that I don't chew up my good leather. And I'm just going to start stitching. So we're coming to another bulky area. I'm going to do a couple hand cranks. I'm going to turn, again, form a hump jumper with my leather, stick it underneath there. Take a couple more hand cranks. Get past this bulk. And then protect my leather and go to the end. And then we're going to baste this long side here closed. Okay, we're going to repeat for this other side. Now we have our zipper placket done. So I'm going to cut this thread first. I'm going to remove my zipper and I'm going to find the center of these zipper plackets. We're going to set these aside and we're going to move on to step 4, which is the lining. Step 4, we're working on the lining, and the first thing we want to do is to make our slip pockets. So just fold these pieces right sides together. We are going to clip the sides and then we're going to stitch them. And this is a little bitty pocket, and you can make this any size you want. But this just is going to go underneath the zipper pocket, so it's just a little tiny one. I've had one of these one time to bag, and I was amazed at how much I used it, how much I liked it, this smaller size. So from here we're going to turn these, and the way I like to do that is to just fold this edge right along your stitch edge. Put your thumb in there and your finger to kind of hold that down. I'm just going to hold that seam down, and then you're just going to take and poke that out. And if you use a little point turner, well, this has got a ball here, and you can just stick it in there, and you've got a big ball and a little ball side. You just stick that right in there and poke that corner out. No cutting needed, just fold it and push it out. It gives you some nice perfect corners. So I'm going to repeat with this pocket, and then I'm going to go over to my iron and I'm going to iron these nice and flat, and then we'll put the accent strips on. The pockets are nice and pressed. They all look great. I'm going to just run a very scant 1/8 of an inch seam allowance down the tops of these to close them, because when we put our accents on there, we don't want the accent piece pulling this apart and creating a weird bubble. Take your accent pieces, and I like to put 1/4 inch double-sided tape on each long side of mine. If your machine does not like 1/4 inch double-sided tape, you can just clip these on. It's whatever you prefer here. You're going to peel the backing off the tape and place the pocket about centered, just shy of centered, because we need to give this leather some room to fold, right in the middle. And then we're going to fold this over. I'm going to do the same thing on this one. You can certainly draw a line down the center of these accent pieces if it helps you place it. And then just fold it over nice and tight against the top of that pocket. Okay, so we are just going to top stitch these accent pieces on. And once you do that, you can just clip these edges off even with the pocket. And then you have a beautiful pocket with a neat little accent on the top. Pockets are done. So we're going to set these aside and we're going to get our zipper and our zipper pockets. So this is going to be the smaller zipper, obviously. And we're just going to clip the wrong side of the zipper against the right side of the pocket. And we're going to stitch this on. And then what you want to do from here is to fold this seam allowance back. Okay, so you're going to fold it back so that your zipper tape is flat, and we're going to top stitch. So now put the wrong side of the zipper again along the right side of the other pocket, and we're going to clip it in place. And we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to stitch it, and then we're going to top stitch. Open this up, lay that seam nice and flat, and top stitch. Go ahead and add your zipper pull, and then pull out one of your lining pieces. On your lining pieces, if you cut them from measurement, you're going to have to cut out squares at the bottom of each corner, and that's so that we can box the corner of the lining. So in the pattern, I tell you exactly how far away to do that. I like to use these little square rulers to do it, and I just mark right on the fabric where I need to cut. Okay, so you can see that in ballpoint pen. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Now, this is the longer side. Okay, this piece is longer than it is tall. So you want to make sure you're doing it at the bottom. So there we have it. So take your zipper overlay, and we're going to take our 1/4 inch double-sided tape. We're going to put a little bit of that on each side. We're going to find the center of our lining at the top. You can either notch or mark it with a pen. And then I give you measurements in the pattern. Go ahead and measure down and put your zipper pocket or your zipper overlay on. To find the center of my zipper overlay, I usually just pinch it. So I'll just take a quick little pinch, and then I know exactly where it is and where to line it up. And I'm just going to line that up right on the lining. Now while I'm at it, I'm also going to take my small pocket and I'm going to center it underneath. And you place it about a 1/2 inch underneath there, underneath your zipper overlay. I'm going to put a couple pins to hold it. And this pocket is small, so you really do not want to divide it at all. Make sure everything looks straight. We're going to sew on the outside of this zipper overlay, and then we're going to stitch this pocket down, across, and up. I want to start and stop in the same hole. And then I'm going to pull my threads through to the back here, tie them off. I'm going to put a little piece of double-sided tape on top of the knot to hold it in place, just to make sure it doesn't come undone. All right, let's stitch the pocket. So we need to cut the center out of this zipper overlay, because that's where our zipper is going to go. So just make a little snip, cut on down, and just make sure that the tip of your scissors goes under your overlay here, because you don't want to cut your overlay. We're going to turn it, and we're just going to cut the backing out so that it doesn't show through the front. So from the back, that's what we have. And then from the front, we have a very nice, neat looking bag. Now before I actually set the zipper in, I want to go ahead and put rivets right here on the side of the pocket. I like to do that before I put my zipper in because I may or may not have put holes in my pocket before. So I'm going to go set those now. So as I was putting my rivets in, I realized I didn't catch my tag. So we'll have to get that on the next pocket. Take your zipper pocket that you have, or your zipper piece here that you have all sewn together. I'm going to put 1/4 inch double-sided tape along the side. And I like to put it right at the edge of the tape. It keeps it out of the window of the zipper opening here, yet gets it close enough to hold it good. So I like my zippers opening to the left, so I'm just going to make sure it's going in that direction, and we're going to peel the backing off the tape, and we're going to set that in. And you want to get it centered both vertically and horizontally, because when you go to sew your pocket closed, you want to make sure you have enough to grab on the side here. And once your zipper is centered to your liking, we're going to go ahead and stitch around the inside box. Now, make sure that your zipper pocket stays open when you do that, or you're going to sew your zipper pocket closed. Pull these threads through the back with my zipper pull and finish up. So you can do a couple things here. You can tie these off and singe the edges, or you could go ahead and pull your pocket back and pull them through this way if you really don't want them to show. I don't think that anybody's going to be looking inside their zipper pocket to see if there's a knot there, so I don't really worry too much about it. I'm just going to tie the knot, cut it, and then just burn the edge of these threads. Now what you want to do is to take your zipper pocket and pull it down and clip the sides. Now whenever you do your zipper pockets this way, you're going to have extra at the bottom. So just cut that off. It'll be about 1 inch, maybe a little more. And now we're going to stitch down each side. You don't want to stitch the bottom closed because that's how we're going to actually sew the bottom of the bag after we turn it. So just turn this around to the right side, pull this back, and then back stitch real good here on the zipper, and you're going to come down, you're going to back stitch real good here at the end. if you have a lot of zipper or seam allowance here, you can cut it off and then just burn the edge of your zipper so that it doesn't unravel. Do the same thing on this edge. And we have one side done. So we're going to go to the other side and we want to center our slip pocket on there. So again, I usually just kind of give it a little pinch so I know where the center is. Line that center up and then put a couple of pins. Now this pocket you may want to divide, and I like to have a pen pocket in mine. And so I'm actually going to measure for that. And typically a pen pocket, I make it 2 inches. So from one of these sides here, I'm just going to mark with an air erase, a Soline air erase pen. Just going to draw a line. So on this pocket, we're going to stitch down, over, up and down, over and back up. I like to, at the top, I'm going to sew up and go over a stitch and come down because I like to put a rivet there. These pockets just get a lot of pulling on, right? You're going in and out of these pockets quite a bit, at least I do on my bags. So I like to put rivets just to give it a little extra support. And then hopefully this time around we will catch our tag. Put it in a little further. So from here, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to punch rivet holes in each of these edges here and in the middle. I'll set the rivets and then we will move on. So we now have our second lining side done. So take your zipper placket and we're going to match the center to the center of the bag or the lining. You want to make sure your zippers are going in the same direction, whatever direction that might be. So I always put that one on first. And then I'll clip the other one on. So let's baste in place. And before we baste that one, I almost forgot about our key fob. Go ahead and get your key fob piece and put a line of 1/4 inch double-sided tape down one side. we're going to pinch this together. Now, if your machine does not like double-sided tape, you can certainly skip putting the double-sided tape and just pinch it together and put clips. Whatever works best for you in your machine. Now I'm going to try to get this as close as possible, but we're going to trim some off, so don't worry if it's not exact. And now we're going to sew 1/4 of an inch from the raw edge. Okay, I'm going to go to my table and I'm going to trim off 1/8 of an inch, which will leave 1/8 of an inch seam allowance here on this piece. Then I'm going to put my 1/2 inch swivel clasp on here and fold this over and put a rivet to hold it in place. Okay, key fob complete. Can you see I just put a swivel clasp to hold that on? Easy enough. So I'm going to take and slide this underneath this upper lining, or excuse me, this zipper placket. I like to have these on the side that my zipper opens so that I don't have to open my bag all the way to grab my keys. I can just open it a little bit and grab it from the side here. So I'm going to just slip this underneath, kind of line it up right about here. And when I baste this on, it'll catch it. Okay, grab your upper linings and we're going to go ahead and stick these on. Now, as I told you in the beginning, I had drew a line on the top of my upper lining and I put my Decaville right against it. I want that to be my top just because I know that Decaville is exactly 1/2 inch because I measured it. So that means I'm going to put the other side against this bag. Now, this piece is the same on both sides. So if you didn't mark yours, there's really no right or wrong. There's really no top and bottom to this piece. I was just a little particular about where I put my Decaville, and I just want to make sure that the top of the bag, when I fold it over, everything folds over nice and even on all pieces. Okay, so we're going to stitch this on. Again, do not sew on your stabilizer. You can sew right next to it. So I'm going to fold this up and I want my seam allowance to stay pointing up. So just kind of finger press this down. And then we're going to top stitch. Now right here I'm going from a high spot to a lower spot because I'm sewing off of my zipper placket. So I'm going to go ahead and put my leather back here because I don't want my foot to chew up my project. We can go ahead and clip off the extra of our key fob. And we have this piece completed. So I'm going to repeat exactly the same process for putting the upper lining on the other piece. Both back and front, or really there's not a back and front for the lining, both lining pieces are done. So from here, I'm just going to clip my zipper out of the way because I don't want to stitch that in my side seams. And we're going to put right sides together. And we want to make sure that our upper linings match. So go ahead and clip that first. That is the most important part right there. So once that's clipped on both sides, I will go ahead and clip the rest of the lining. Okay. So I'm just going to clip on down. Now we're going to leave the bottom open. So just clip the sides here for now. And when you stitch the sides, you're going to have to take a slightly larger seam allowance because these pieces are cut from measurements. So there's no taper in the pattern piece to account for, an extra seam allowance to reduce bulk because there's no pattern pieces essentially. And even if you did download the square pattern pieces, there's no taper in those. So go ahead and take a bigger seam allowance here. So I'm going to start right at the point that I want to match, which is my upper linings. So I'm going to put my needle in right there. And once I do, now that spot right there can't come apart. So it has to match up. So I'm going to back stitch up to the top, and then I'm going to turn around, and right after I get to the bump of my upper lining, I'm going to start taking that larger seam allowance. And I'm going to go, I'm stitching 1/2 inch here at the top. I'll sneak over to 5/8, and then might even go down here to just shy of 3/4 of an inch at the bottom. So right here, I'm already increasing it to 5/8. And then we're going to turn this over. I'm going to do the same thing. Put my needle in where it counts. From here, we want to cut back these seam allowances. So I don't want to cut here at the top where I need to open the seam allowances. So I'm going to clip it or cut it all the way up, go past the bulk that I have here with my upper linings, and then just cut it straight across. Cut it off. So as I approach this, I'm just going to get back by that lump, that bulk, and then I'm just going to turn this and clip it off. Maybe I will. There we go. So you see here, I still have some seam allowance left to open up, but everything else is cut back nice and tight. If you want to put a little bit of double-sided tape on these seams to hold them open, you can certainly do that. And I think I will. So I'm just going to take little pieces of 1/4 inch stick it right there at the top. It's just going to help as I stitch this bag together. One thing about double-sided tape is that it's really meant for leather, so it works really well. See, look at how it's holding that open. I don't have that kind of luck with faux leather. Usually it doesn't stick. It sticks to me more than it does the project. Or at least it feels that way. So we've got our beautiful lining. I'll tell you, this red is gorgeous with this brown and black leopard. So let's take our bag and we're going to slide it in. Now, if you prefer your zipper pocket in the back, just kind of, there's really no front and back to this unless you want the front to be where you have your tag. And because we took the seam allowance a little bit deeper in the lining, this is going to be a tight fit. Match up your side seams with your side notches. So the side seams on the upper lining with the side notches on the bag. And then let's go to the other side and do the same thing. Okay, then we're going to, and I didn't make any center marks. Well, I have a center mark here for where I did my pocket, so I can kind of see where the center is. I'm going to match that center up to my upper lining. Do the same thing on this side. And then we're just going to clip the rest. And just like that, we have a perfect fit. So I'm going to sew from the inside. I'm going to lay this down because I know I measured exactly a ½ inch from the top of all of these pieces. And I know exactly where that seam allowance is, and that's where the decoville is. So we're going to start there. We're going to go around a big circle. we made it all the way around. So all we need to do now is pull our bag out the bottom. Don't cut back any seam allowances at the top here. Okay, let's put our lining inside and make sure it looks like it's going to fit okay. And when I do that, I like to actually kind of squeeze the seam allowance here because I want to make sure that the seam itself is right at the top of the bag. So I might even throw a few clips in here. Open this up and get it in. And if you put your decaville in the right spot and you measured, everything should fold over nicely because it's folding right around that decaville. This is really a great bag to make if you have a thicker fabric. This is not thick by any means, but if you do, because none of the seams match up. And what I mean by that is your lining seams are here on the sides and your front and back seams are here on the front where these pockets are. So you don't have seam on top of seam that you're trying to top stitch. It really makes it nice. And then because this is leather, if you want, you can actually take this over and just hammer where the seams are down a little bit. Honestly, this leather does not need it. It is so soft and it is so flat already. It is amazing. And I want to take a peek at my lining and just make sure everything looks like it's going to fit okay. Which it does. So we are going to hop on over to the cylinder arm and we are going to top stitch. Here we are at the cylinder arm machine. We're going to go ahead and top stitch. Now anywhere that you have a seam, just be careful that your machine doesn't grab the leather and chew it up a little bit. It should be fine because there's not a lot of bulk in this bag, but just kind of be aware of it. So I'm going to start over here on the side. Here we go. We have some beautiful top stitching that's been done. I have my threads here that I did not back stitch, and I'm going to pull them through to this back side and feed them between my lining and my main part of my bag to hide them, because I don't want to see any kind of back stitching or really be able to notice where I started and stopped. So I'm just going to use a hand needle, thread these in that, and stick it down in there, and then when we come back we'll close up the bottom of the bag. Okay, all my threads are hidden, so now I'm going to open up my zipper pocket and pull the lining out of the zipper pocket. So this is just right at this point the zipper pocket that I've pulled out. So reach inside and grab the bottom of your lining pieces and pull those out of the pocket. Now this is going to create a little bit of a wrinkle, but if you have a small iron, be heating it up, and we'll just press it when we're done, and we'll get a nice crisp lining. And of course, the quicker we do this part, the better too, because it stays bunched up for less amount of time. So clip your bottoms. Stick my key fob back in there so I don't sew it. I'm going to clip all the way to the other side here. And when we sew the seam allowance, we're actually going to do it at a little bit larger than a 1/2 inch, because if you remember, when we sewed the side seams, we increased it to 5/8 or maybe between 5/8 and 3/4. So that's what we want to sew this side seam, or this seam at. Just making sure that everything is lined up. Sometimes you got to pull it a little bit to get it to do right. Trim this seam allowance back to about 1/4 inch. We don't want to have that bulk down there at the bottom of the bag. Okay, so from here, you're going to box your corners. So make sure the side seam's pulled out real good, and you have this square here, or this little cutout that we made. Just open that up and match the seams. Now, when you match these seams, you want to nest them together so that it lays flatter and you don't have as much bulk. So what that means is that this bottom seam is going in that direction, and this side seam is coming in this direction, and I'm just matching the exact spot where I stitched. Okay, let's see if I can show that to you. Can you see how those seams are going in opposite directions? So we're going to stitch, and this time we are just going to take the 1/2 inch seam allowance. We don't need to go any larger. So I'm going to do the same thing with this one. Just make sure that your bottom seam is nested in the same direction as the other side. So in this case, my bottom seam is headed down, so I'm going to make sure this side's headed down as well. And after you sew it, you can just go ahead and trim it down to about 1/4 of an inch. So now that those are both sewn, we're just going to stuff this right back in the bag. Make sure it all looks good. And that fits like a glove. That's gorgeous. Okay, so now take your pocket, and we need to close that up. So I'm just going to start here at one of the edges, fold the seam allowance in one direction or the other, doesn't matter. And just fold that over about 1/2 inch. Put a clip. And I'm going to do the same thing with this side. And then if you pull it taut, it usually kind of lays down. And you can clip it. Now you can certainly iron this as well, if that helps, to get everything to lay nice and flat. We're going to sew this, and we're just going to use a scant 1/8 of an inch just to top stitch it closed. We don't want to take a real deep seam here. We have that closed up, so let's put it back in the bag. And I'm just going to poke those corners down in there real good. That's going to be the one spot that we have the most bulk. It's not bad, but if you push them down in there real good, it usually helps. Look at how pretty that is. Everything's laying nice and flat. So now we just have these few finishing touches. We want to go ahead and put our zipper pull on, and you want to make sure that once you do, of course, these two edges here where it closes matches up really well. So try it out. You know, sometimes you have to cheat where maybe you put one of these teeth in a little deeper if you didn't get things quite matched up when you sew the zipper placket. This is where you can, let's say cheat it, but fix it a little bit. That looks really good right there. So the great thing about leather is you can kind of form it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of push these sides in, and where it would bend, I'm just going to pinch. And leather holds its shape better than really faux leather or anything else you're going to use. And see how that kind of stays square? Do the same thing with this side. Get it nice and square. Train the leather to do what I want it to do. And we're going to put our zipper end and our handles on. Let's put our zipper end on. So I want to make sure my zipper is nice and straight. So I'm just going to trim this up a little bit. Burn this. And then go ahead and fold the zipper tape behind the teeth. So what I typically do is fold, fold, and then down here where my finger is, I put a clip. And that just helps hold it, so I'm not trying to hold it and put the end on at the same time. So this is our zipper end. So I'm just going to slide that on. Now, sometimes I like to put a little bit of glue at the end just to hold it in place. It doesn't hurt to do it by far, and if anything, it just helps keep everything kind of secure. So I'm just going to put a little, just a little dab of glue. This is liquid fusion, but you can use pretty much any kind of glue that you have. And I'm just going to slide this on. Push it all the way down. And then I'm going to screw my little screw in. So I do sell zipper pulls on the website. Also, of course, the D-rings. Anything that you need for the bag. Okay, so that's done. So once it's done, just take your clip off and your zipper pull is on and good to go. So we'll stick that inside. And on your handles, let's mark those so we can go ahead and put our handles on. So from the end, I'm going to measure in 3/8 of an inch, and then from the 3/8 of an inch mark, 1 1/4 inches. And of course, we want these centered. And usually what I'll do is mark one, punch it, and this is if you want 1 rivet. If you want 2 rivets, just make adjustments here so you can add 2. Just gonna slide this, make sure I'm happy with how that looks. And if you're not, you can cheat a little bit by making the holes a little bigger. But obviously once you make a hole, the hole's in there. Okay, I like the way that looks. So I'm going to mark the other side of the handle just by lining it up. Line up the edges. Mark again. Now remember, you have one end that you pulled the threads through the back and burned. So you want to make sure that that end gets encompassed in the fold of the handle. So for me, that is this right here. So I want to make sure that the handle, since I have a knot there, folds this way. Now on the second handle, I'm going to make marks on one side. I'm going to wait for the second side, because if my handles are slightly different in size, you know, sometimes maybe they are just little, then you don't want to punch the second hole, because you can actually make one end a little deeper than the other if you need to. So let's put this on. Let me make sure there's my knot. So it's going that way, this way. Make sure they're on the same side, and then we're just going to slide it up in. Now you could certainly sew this if you don't want to rivet, and if you don't want to edge coat, you know, punch and edge coat the side of your handles, you could certainly put some hardware on here. Okay. So there's one side. Let's get the other side on. So I'm going to mark the 3/8 of an inch, but not the 1 1/4. I just want to, again, make sure my handles are going to be the right size. So I'm going to mark that. That's the side with my knot. So I'm going to put this in. Put the cap on. Now I have, if you put a dark enough mark with a silver marking pen. When you fold this over, it'll make a mark where you need to put your second dot. So I'm going to slide this in, hold my handles up. Just make sure they're going to be the same size. So right there is the same size. So I'm just going to fold this over and press it down. And now it gave me where my second mark goes. It's a pretty cool little trick. All right, so I'm going to go press these rivets in and then we're done. So here she is all done. Just gorgeous. I love working with this leather. No skiving needed. I mean, you can't go wrong with it. So of course we have our pocket here in the front. We have one in the back, and a cell phone fits in there perfectly. We have a nice zip top closure. And of course with the leather, you know, we train it and it actually is very square. It's amazing. I'll give you a quick peek inside. And I did run an iron in here, just one of my, you know, little small Oliso irons. Everything looks great, fits perfectly, and you just, again, you can't go wrong with it. So the kits are available on the website. If you're interested in this particular kit, it's going to give you the leather that you need, lining in the barn red, and of course the hardware and zippers. So until next time, y'all, happy sewing.